What is happening? What's up, fellas?
What's happening? What's happening?
Lots happening. I'm excited, man. I want to thank you, Al, for pushing us to a little more structured format and really allowing us to kind of sift and sort through the topics that we are seeing that are really relevant and important that's happening in the world and in the industry and also either with us at EXP or not, but just kind of what's out there, right? What the headlines and give us an opportunity to really unpack it from our, combined experience and perspective over, the last 2 decades plus in this industry and what we're able to see and being able to give not just Honey Badger Nation, but really the entire industry, kind of our thoughts and perspective and ways to maybe think about it and what it means to us and what it means to them moving forward. So I'm excited for the new format.
Yeah,
me too. Just to give some context, first of all, we're glad to be back on the One Big Fire podcast. I don't remember if it was 2018 or 19. I can't remember when we fired that up, but we got busy recruiting some agents and got away from really just the principles that we needed to be sticking to, which was really delivering, relevant, up-to-date, content to our audience to help them grow their business. And, I'm not regretful of anything, but except we probably should have kept it going, but we're back. And I want to kind of start out by saying, the whole reason that that this podcast was named the One Big Fire podcast goes back to 2015. Our mastermind, Mr. Jay Kinder, his famous words in Aspen, and it's fun to think about. This is almost nine years later, almost 10 years later. And I believe that, we've exceeded where we thought we would be in that how big that this One Big Fire actually became. And I'm proud of it. And I'm excited for the future. So before we dig into these topics, because they are hot, want to talk about, make sure you go to honeybadgernation.com and check out our Agent to CEO event that we have coming. It is absolutely going to be fire. It literally keeps getting better and better every single day that we add another speaker. We add, another component to it that it's going to make the experience so mind-blowingly great. So we now have we're having actually, in addition to Rock and Rescue and Gary LaVox, which is on night 2, we've booked another country singer for night 1, and he's awesome. Tyler Reed, he's actually opened for us for Rock and Rescue in the past, and he's going to be doing a private show at the farm. That's the name of it. We're not doing it at a farm. Agent to CEO will not be at a farm, but it'll be at the farm, which is in downtown Cleveland, the Flats, East Bank of the Flats area. It's a brand new building that they built for country music, but we're transforming it into a business transformation venue for 2 days, September 18th and 19th. So make sure you go to grab that. You can also go to agenttoceocle.com and grab your tickets because they're going fast. There's going to be only 100 people in that room. We're cutting it off at that. And it's going to be awesome. So let's dig in, boys.
Let's dig in. So, really hitting these topics, and we sifted and sorted through multiple topics that we really wanted to dive into, and that, like we said, we thought were hot and relevant to kind of what's happening right now, and obviously first and foremost, the bigger picture with Biden dropping out of the race. How are we seeing or thinking that that's really going to affect the housing market?
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I get fascinated with politics, sometimes to a fault, because it pulls me off of the focus on business. I don't know about you guys, but it's fascinating. I mean, it's
nothing more fascinating than now.
I mean, I didn't think that it could get any more fascinating after the last few years.
Yeah.
But it certainly is fascinating. And it made me think back to the last election that I felt like, it was Trump and Hillary when they were going at it. It was 2016, and it was like right during Rock and Rescue. I remember I put a billboard up, and it went, it caused all kinds of problems because people were talking about leaving the country if Trump was elected, or they were going to leave the country if Hillary was elected. And there's just this division that's so deep. It's fascinating. It's a shame in some ways, but it's also fascinating. So we want to bring you guys, the information that what our opinions on what's going to happen during this newest election cycle that's coming. And so I'm going to try to find, I actually had the wrong slides up. So I'm looking for that, and I'll share my screen. What do you guys think?
I mean, as far as the election goes, I mean, I think it looks like Trump's probably going to win. I mean, I don't see a way for the Democrats to recover. This is a colossal fuck up on their part. But, they waited way too long to name whoever they're going to name to run against Trump. Maybe that'll work to their advantage because, but nobody's going to know who that person is. So, I think that the whole assassination attempt, brought a lot more unity to Trump's side. I think a lot of people moved over to this is definitely corrupt and it's out of control, and maybe I was on the wrong side. So again, whether what side you're on or not, I don't really care. But it seems like that's the direction it's going as far as the election goes. And I think for real estate, that's going to be good. I think all the things that Trump had put in place, the cost segregation, and some of those things that are back on the table already. But that's going to be all good things for real estate and the economy.
Well, what do they say, Jay? People vote with their wallets.
Right. I
mean, you saw the stock market take a huge rally right after that assassination attempt. The experts and the research we've been doing are showing that mortgage rates are going to ease a little bit. We'll get into that here in a minute. But yeah, so check this out. 8 of the last 11 presidential elections. I got to blow this up so I can see it. Jeez. They've had decreased rates. So the only time that it looks like decreased leading up to 8 out of the last, leading up to, that's the key, leading up to. So it looks like that according to this chart, they will decrease slightly again, but they're calling that from that on the economic side of things as well. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? I've been saying that if they were to lower them, they don't have to lower them into the 3s and 4s or anything like that. I think if we got close to low 6, high 5s, 5.9, that's going to be a jolt. That's the enough jolt that we're going to need, I believe, to really, kickstart this back again. The other factor we have to remember, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, is what's happening on August 17th with the settlement being enforced, the negotiation of the settlement actually being enforced throughout our industry. And we know that this is also a very statewide thing. Each state has to make their own move, so to speak. Each brokerage has to, have their own set policies, what forms to use, what they can't use. And it's pretty freaking chaotic right now. I mean, when you think about it, it's not business as usual. I believe it will pass, and we're going to get back to whatever that new, I hate to use this COVID term, but the new norm in real estate. We're not going to see what that looks like until, I would say, like midway through 2025.
Yeah. And like you said, don't want to get too ahead of it. I think, still looking at kind of, election years with the housing market. And obviously there's that, a lot of conversation. I know we all 3 of us talk to a lot of agents, and, you look at, okay, well, what do the statistics say, right? Going back and look at the statistics, right? So we know they tend to lower the rates a little bit. I don't think we want it too low. Obviously, home sales up in every election year, the year after, and home prices up, except for back in the 80s. So I think we'll still a little bit of that. The only thing that's kind of concerning, and I had a really good conversation with Alex, our very good friend Alex Piak, a couple of weeks ago about this, and he's like, man, he said, we have to be careful. He said, because just kind of even what he's experiencing in Frisco, which is, I think we can all, Frisco, Texas is probably one of the hardest real estate markets in the country, right? Just from everybody, the best of the best are here doing the best of the best here right? And doing everything. And so he's like, man, he said, we want to be careful. He goes, man, just in back to having clients back up in the Northwest and just conversations around like, bro, like I can't believe the prices are the prices. And it's like, it just doesn't make sense that they are as high as they are, and still in kind of a basic economic 101 of supply and demand. And so like, if it does kickstart a little bit of a demand, what does it already do to, in some opinions, artificially overpriced house values? What does that do? Does it push them up even more? And you're talking about from an affordability side of things, like, is that a problem we want to deal with? So it's just interesting of how to navigate. But I think looking at, the housing market as a whole, I don't know. I mean, we all got to ride through 7, 8, and 9, man. I just, and we've said before in these conversations, right? Necessarily doesn't repeat itself. It is cycled. So it's like a close cousin. So like, where are you seeing? We know the data shows that rates come down. We see where home values should go up. Home prices went up as well. Like, what's y'all's take on that if those trends in election years tend to hold true?
Man, I mean, we're certainly, we're trending for what, 3.89 million home sales, which is the lowest it's been in, I don't even know, 15 years, something crazy like that. So, I think the original consensus at the beginning of the year was 4.8 to 5.1 million, which would have been kind of par with what it was last year. And we're way below that. So inventory is going up across the country slowly. I don't know the answer to this. How does what is Trump going to do specifically to tame inflation and not, and housing affordability already being an issue? And if lowering the rates is going to drive up values of homes and drive up, the cost of housing, that's a problem. So, I don't know what they do. But my anticipation is they're not going to lower rates dramatically. If we see 5.95 ever in the next couple of years, I think we'll be lucky. But that's it's an interesting conundrum that we're in, because home sales are down significantly. So is it headed towards a crash? Probably not. But certainly homes are staying on the market a little longer, receiving less offers, and that's probably likely to continue, I would guess. I don't see how you can implement something that's going to change that. Obviously not, printing $4.8 trillion and putting it into the economy will help with the Republican side of things versus the Democrats. But we've never seen that kind of money printed ever in history. So that's why we're where we're at. But what happens from here, I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell, because there's no real place you can go back and look at that much money being printed and what happened in the housing economy.
Are you muted out?
Oops, sorry about that. A lot of that stimulus was coming, as a result of, the pandemic, though, right? Like a lot of that cash, was approved and infused into the market 4 years ago, which started the cycle,
right?
Of what we're dealing with right now. The question, you make the good point. I don't know the answer to it. You would hope that by lowering the rates, the people that said, "Hey, I'm not moving," they decide to move, which then loosens the market up, so there's more flow coming in. We are starting to see more foreclosures right now. We are starting to see more delinquencies. A friend of mine put a post up, and he's like, the stock market, everyone's 401k is double what it was in 2020, and you shouldn't be complaining. I'm like, look, credit card debt is just rising like crazy right now, and people's savings accounts are depleting. That's what's happening to real Americans right now.
Mhm.
So, we will see. We're definitely not swamis that we can look in a crystal ball and say what's going to happen, but safely. John, if you want to, I think I pulled the next slide up just to kind of share. The other thing is the mortgage. Oh, so that was mortgage rates. Excuse me. Let's see here. Did it change on the screen?
No.
Maybe it's like a freezing type of thing when I share. Oh well. We'll figure out how to share these slides at some point. But I'm on the tab that it's on and flipping it, but it's not showing it for some reason. How about now?
No, cancel that out and just do a reshare, and then we'll be able to pull it back up.
Yeah. All right. Cool. What else, guys?
Yeah, so I think you kind of alluded to it, right? With what's happening with the commission sharing. Obviously, EXP is ending. Just a couple days prior than what is set for August 17th. EXP's share ending August 15th, and kind of to the point, it's kind of floating around the internet like it's a big surprise. Like we all know it's coming. So you look at based upon NAR settlement, the changes affect August 17th. Not allowing listing brokers making offers on multiple listing services as a requirement that brokers and agents get contracts with buyers signed that they're working with before touring a home. So like give some take on this and obviously kind of what the talk around the industry of how things are going to be handled.
Yeah. I mean, we were all talking before we came live here that we were scratching our heads trying to figure out why was it floating around the internet on, social media platforms and, whispers and rumors and people putting stuff up on, lab coat agents about EXP making this big announcement that they're not going to be doing commission sharing after August 15th. When on August 17th, 2 days later, no one's going to be allowed to do that. So it was kind of just funny that we saw that floating around, and it was before I think something sort of got leaked that we were going to make this announcement that this is the day we're going to do it. But I'm going to tell you this: if you're a real estate professional and your broker doesn't have a plan before that,
yeah,
I would say that you're doing your homework like the night before the test is done. I mean, we definitely were ahead of it. Leo got on that live. What did we say? There was 50,000 people on that live, and that wasn't just conjecture. That was straight, real talk with action behind it. His team got ahead of this thing with forms. We have some of the top MLSs in the country saw the forms that we're putting out. And we're like, everyone should take what EXP's forms and just duplicate them for your brokerage. I think it was Rob, the notorious ROB. Can't remember that guy's name, but that's a good it's a good blog that he's got.
Yeah.
The Notorious.
Notorious.
And, yep. And so, we're definitely ahead of it. What's really interesting, this was actually just brought up. We're bringing a huge team aboard. In fact, this team that's coming aboard is probably going to land itself in the number 1 or 2 spot in teams with EXP Realty. And that's how they're doing over 1,000 transactions. Just absolutely killing it. Got to meet Matt, the gentleman. And basically their agents were all on this call, and their number 1 question was, what do you have prepared for us to handle this when this all hits? And I gave them obviously honeybadgernation.com. They can sign up and take the CHBA. If you haven't taken the CHBA course yet, get in there and take it. And then they asked me, hey, because this guy knows, I think he was a Kinder Reese client at one point. And he comes to me and says, oh yeah, I can't wait to, reconnect with Jay. And he's like, Can you share with all of my agents how much you paid for those courses when you were actually a coaching client? Like, yeah, I mean, it was tens of thousands of dollars to be a member, and you get a free membership, and you need to take advantage of it because it's going to carry you right through this. We've been getting buyer agent reps signed since 2011, maybe you earlier, Jay. John, when you guys were running the brokerage, maybe you were doing it earlier, but we started when you guys came out with the CHPA. I trained my whole team. I flew my whole team to Dallas. We did the boot camp, and they came back like Navy SEALs ready to hit the beach, and they were trained. Was it Reese always says you're either trained on how to disarm a bomb or you're not. There's no in between. And the same is going to go for what happens after August 15th or August 17th. You're either going to be trained on how to get a buyer's agent agreement signed with your fee negotiated up front, or you're not. And you nailed it in that text thread, Jay. You said there's about to be a Darwinian thinning of the herd, and it's true.
Yep. I mean, I have to imagine just based on the statistics of home sales by agents and the average number of homes sold by an agent, that there are a tremendous number of agents that just have their head in the sand and have no clue how to get a buyer representation agreement signed. I mean, I see it in comments on all these other threads and all these other groups. Like, why would I work with buyers if I'm not going to get paid a commission anymore? Like, really? Like, that was you really thought and then actually typed that into a post? Like, I mean, it's incredible, and we've always kind of known and said this. You know, there's a large percentage of real estate agents that probably should not be in the industry, and this, if anything, will weed a lot of those people out. So I think there will be. I don't know what percentage. I couldn't even speculate, but I would think 10-15% of the agents that are out there are probably just going to give up, and that's not a bad thing. I think that the professionalism of the industry goes up. The standards for being a professional go up when your skills have to go up. And so, the winners in this are going to be the people that go through CHBA, that have been trained, that know how to articulate their value, that understand, how to make this offer to a buyer, and understand how to negotiate with another agent. This is going to be fun if you know how to negotiate. It goes back to, whenever you're only doing one deal every month or two, you need that deal worse than the buyer or seller needs that deal sometimes. But when you're doing a lot of real estate deals, and you're truly negotiating on behalf of your client, when you talk to every person that has a listing, I'm going in there trying to cut their throat and get everything for my buyer. I'm going to get them a discount on the house. I'm going to get my commission paid. I'm going to get all that stuff. That's what you do as a real estate agent, is negotiate on behalf of your client, which includes your fee being paid by the seller now. And so, I love change, man. This stuff, I geek out over it. So, like, for me, this would be just nothing but more fun.
Yeah. I think it's two parts there, just to kind of summarize the two points that you guys made. The number one is the skill set, right? The skill to be able to have a process, to have a system to be able to follow that articulates your value. And so I think that's the key component. And then it steps back into, like you said, the negotiation side of things. And I think for a lot of real estate agents, there's, the one book that I default to is Chris Voss, right? And Never Split the Difference. Because if you understand a couple of his core concepts, and this is where CHBA comes in, right? And this is where you have to be able to get the client to believe that you have the best system and the best service to help them solve whatever it is they're trying to solve. So you go back to our job as true professionals and true experts. Our job is to help them become problem aware. Our job is to help them become solution aware. And then our job is to help them understand that we have the service aware and the system aware to help them achieve the solution that they're looking for to overcome the problem that they have. And you got to connect all three dots for them because they're just not aware. And that's where CHBA, a proven process to be able to articulate your value. And then you hit them with the question, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you guys believe that this is the best process and best system to help you guys accomplish what you're wanting to accomplish, X, Y, and Z by this time frame? And they're like, damn, yeah, that's right. Right. And that's what you're looking for is like, Jay, you don't want to hear, Jay, you're right. You want to hear, dude, your system is right for what we're trying to accomplish. And I think, developing the skill set, and there's this great chart that my coach Matt shared with us. And he talks about, what we're looking for is we're all looking for a state of flow, right? To where things feel effortless, and we're moving into just that kind of flow state. And that's kind of the balance of taking on a challenge, but also having the skill set to meet it. And what he talks about is that anytime that we feel anxious or concerned or nervous about the future, which is anxiety, right? We're fearful of the future. And the reason we feel that way is because we don't have the skills to meet that challenge. So if you're a real estate agent right now, or just anything in your life that you feel anxious about, it's because you don't have the skill set to overcome the challenge that you're facing. And so if you're an agent right now that's anxious, you need CHSA, CHBA, you need negotiation training. Like, you need to commit to developing those skills and develop the skills to where now that anxiety is gone. And so, like, you guys, I mean, the things that we're talking about right here are two fundamental tools of being a true expert moving into the future. And you just got to have a process, man, and you got to have the skills.
In kind of thinking about what we were just talking about with why people are putting these posts up and why it's looking like it's a surprise. I was listening to a podcast at the gym yesterday, and I made this quick note. And what they were talking about was, the guy asked a question, and I guess this guy like predicts a lot of stuff that happens in the future, whatever. And he said, I asked a group of people, do you wish that the Civil War never happened? And I guess depending on the group of people you're asking, if you're asking a bunch of veterans who've been, hurt or whatever, they'd be like, no, I would not want the Civil War to happen. But when you look back at history, it had to have happened. And look what came of it. America, became a whole new country of industrialized. We started becoming a superpower at that point because of what happened, right? But he compared it to like where we're at right now. And if you kind of look at this, like the three of us, we made it through 07, 08, 09, 2010. And if you're a real estate professional listening to this right now, and you made it through those years and you're still in the business, first of all, congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's kind of a rite of passage. This is where I'm going with this, okay? Like, we have PTSD from 08. At least I do, okay? Had one of my rental properties go into foreclosure, had to short sell it. My credit score went from 800 to like 475 or whatever. I couldn't get a loan for anything for a couple of years and had to rebuild. I didn't just lose my money. I lost my money and went in deep into debt. And so the way that they were talking about it in this podcast is like, everyone loves the result of who you become when you go through a rite of passage like that. But if you were to say, hey, want to do it again? We're like, nope, I'm good. I want to go through that again. But the cool thing with this is that we are prepared. And if you're new to this business, you need to be prepared. This isn't fear-mongering talk. This is, you're about to go through a cycle that will be remembered forever in history. And we will be made better for it, but we're going to lose. There's some blood. There's going to be some blood in the streets on the way through this thing. Yeah. But let's not sugarcoat it, because a lot of people, I think they're burying their head because either A, they didn't go through 08, 09. Like, I don't know about you guys, but that hit me like a ton of bricks pretty quick. Like, what? The real estate market's crashing? I don't understand why. Well, we had all these loans where you didn't have to qualify for many years. I mean, we were living like drunken sailors and pirates for a while. Duh, it's going to catch up. And this is not the same situation. So please don't mistake me for saying that this is a similar, but it is going to be another rite of passage. There's two camps here. You're either going to be trained to get your buyer's agent to pay the fee and run through red lights to want to work with you, or you're not. And if you're not, you're still going to need to be skilled on the listing side to survive. And if you're not in either of those, you're gone. So, kudos to anyone who's taken that course or who has prepared themselves. Or, I was talking to Harley the other day. Some states have required buyer agency agreements for years, like Virginia. He had told me, he's like, I don't know anything different. This is just what we've always been doing. Yeah. So there's going to be some states, I think, that if this was a required practice, they're not going to feel much of anything, but then the rest will.
I think the thing too, man, is, I've said this to a lot of team leads, and I'm like, man, we want agents with a little bit of experience and stuff. I said, do you? I said, I would make sure that they have one key trait, that they're coachable and that they've proven that they've been coachable in the past. If not, I would go after brand new agents, because the reason I would go after brand new agents is that they don't know any different. Mm-hmm. You're teaching them the right way, the right process. They're not going to skip steps, and they're going to follow the process the way it is and the way it's going to be to thrive into the future. And so if you're a real estate agent, and you're tuning into this and you lack the coachability trait, then you might think about doing something else, because, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less.
Right. Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this question. What do you think, this is the part that I think a lot of people are also scared, a little bit worried and concerned about, the weak listing agent that goes out and takes the listing and doesn't communicate to the seller, oh no, you don't have to pay the buyer's agent. We can't offer it anyway. So no, you're not going to have to pay that. Like, when you're negotiating with that agent before you take them an offer, you're going to have to be really good at setting the table for, hey, listen, if this, we're going to need a concession for the buyer agent commission, or this deal's not going to happen. And, those conversations, how do you think these conversations are going to go between agents prior to an offer getting written? And what do you think, the percentage of the time that's going to be paid by the seller or not? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I personally think that there's going to be, based on price range of the house, I think there'll be different conversations. I believe that your weak listing agents, to your question or point, Jay, they're going to take that easy way out and not encourage, the seller to offer a concession to pay for the buyer to use for however they want. But in this case, we know that it's going to be going to pay and compensate the buyer's agent, which the buyer's agency can't go away. It can't go away. If it goes away and buyers come in unrepresented, we're going to see lawsuits skyrocket. Mm-hmm. And that's just what's going to happen. Okay. Because they don't know what the hell they're doing. And they're going to go back. They're going to feel like they got, the short end of a stick on a negotiation. They got had by the listing agent who was not representing them. And we're going to have a shit show on our hands of litigation everywhere. And that's just my belief. So your skilled agents are going to put that, they're going to put the compensation in as a concession. And if they don't, on lower priced homes, and when I talk about lower priced homes, I'm not talking about like dirt. I'm talking about your first time home buyer. I'm talking about your FHA buyer who doesn't have a whole lot of cash. I'm talking about your VA buyer who doesn't have a whole lot of cash sitting around. Some of them do, but most don't. And those two classes, if you're listing homes in the price ranges where you would see people taking loans out in those two categories, you need to have that seller concession in there. Otherwise, we will start to see home sales in that category start to dip and go down. Mm-hmm. The other option, and the other, I shouldn't say option, but the other thing that could happen would be you have more buyers just going straight directly to the listing agents. Many brokerages are saying, hey, because how do you do a dual agency? How you have to negotiate your fee with the buyer up front, right? So what if they came directly through an open house that you were having you have an opportunity to either A, represent them, or B, not represent them and only represent your sellers, which is what I always did and I always practiced. And frankly, if it was me and I was running my own brokerage, I would say you're only representing the seller. The buyer is coming in unrepresented because we can't really negotiate our fee with them up front before showing them the house. What happens when they come through an open house? They see the house, they want to buy it, and like, oh yeah, by the way, if you want to buy this, my fee is X%. I don't think it can work that way. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I had like a whole flurry of thoughts. Just all right. So say that again, Al. I wrote down what I had to say because I had 3 really good questions to talk about.
Well, it was just really like your question was for the listing agents who are weak, who are just going to go sign people up at whatever, half of whatever they would normally have charged and not put any concessions,
right?
Any buyer concessions coming from a seller in there. How is that going to affect the market as a whole?
So that's exactly where I was in my thoughts. So, I look at it like this. So like the weak agents that are out there, they're still there. They're the ones that overprice the home, right? So, the listings in your marketplace, when you look at it, you're like, who priced this? Is ridiculous, right? And you assume 2 things. One, not a motivated seller, probably, or really stupid agent, right? Like it's just way overpriced, right? They didn't have the balls to tell them what they need to hear, or they took the listing at a price that's just unrealistic, right? So like that already exists today. So the other option is if you're talking to a seller, and if I'm representing the seller, I'm saying, hey, listen, let's go in at this price, this lower price, and let's see what happens. Maybe they ask us to pay the concession, maybe they don't, depending on the price point. So you might see more aggressive pricing by at least 3% on homes, and then people just see what happens in the offer, in the negotiation, and not offer those concessions. And I might use that if I'm talking to a seller that's wanting to push price where I don't think it's necessarily going to bring that. I'm going to be like, listen, let's go in here. Let's not offer the concession. So that there's a lot in that discussion and negotiating with the seller on where to price the home and how you set the expectation of what's going to happen when we do get an offer. And then there's on the flip side of that, there's, talking to a buyer and saying, listen, we're going to get you the best deal, the best deal on the perfect home. That might be us offering above the asking price to cover those concessions, and it still might be a good deal. We need to look at the value of the home in the marketplace compared to other sales to make sure that we're not overpaying for a home. But in some cases where they've opted to price that house and it looks like a really good deal at the price it's at, we might have to go in and go above and beyond in order to get that home if that value is there. So there's some conversations and setting expectations that have to be done. And it's no different than what we've always done, right? Like if you got a buyer, but you're signing a buyer rep agreement, I say, we charge 3%. We're going to ask the seller to pay that for you. Are you okay with that? They always say yes, right? But like before I would go show a property, if it was like a code 1.5, I would be like, hey, remember when we talked about if there was a shortage of our commission that you might have to make up the difference. This is a home that's not offering our 3%. So we're going to need to ask them to pay the difference on this particular home. And so you have to just be, communicating these things where once again, most agents don't do a good job of that. And I think most of the good ones do, but most of the, the weaker agents are going to struggle big time with this, right? Like it's all about setting expectations.
It is, man. I think this is so important, right? That we talk about, man, you got to have that consult on the front end and have these conversations on the front end. If not, if we've all gone through difficult conversation training, right? So you look at where difficult conversations, but you can head a lot of that off if you have those conversations on the front end and form that agreement. And then so when that thing pops up during the process, it's not a difficult conversation. It's like, hey, remember we talked about that. This is the situation. This is how it's unfolding. And the problem that agents or untrained people, they just avoid that conversation on the front end. But it's an easy conversation on the front end before you get into the heat of it.
Yeah.
And then so now what a lot of agents are going to do, they're going to avoid that difficult. It's not difficult, just avoid that conversation on the front end. Now it becomes difficult. And then they don't want to stand in the way of the buyer getting the home. So they're just not going to get paid.
Right.
And you can't do that very often. Right. And then that's what's going to continue to thin the herd because they're financially not going to be able to be able to stay in the game.
Yeah. It goes back to if you were doing buyer brokerage agreements prior to showing properties before, you probably were doing all this. And if you weren't, it's a big change for you, right? Like that's going to be, and I disagree with this, but I'm going to put it out there is like, I've seen people comment, well, the buyers are just going to go to the listing agent now since they can save all that money. Okay. No, they're not. They're not going to do that. They could do that today. Go to the, it was so far and few between when someone would come to me and want to buy from me and then try to negotiate the 3% down for me. Be like, if they bought the house for me, I got paid twice. So there was no negotiating that. But even, that's just not how buyers think. The number of buyers that actually came to me as a listing agent to buy from me specifically is so few and far between that I just don't ever see that that's going to be, how buyers behave. It's no different than discount. Why do more people not go to Redfin agents and get a huge discount on the fee? Why? Because that's not what they're not out there looking to get the best deal on the agent commission. They're out there to find the perfect home, and the agent that's able to help them do that is who they're gonna work with. So that's it's interesting, certainly interesting. But I do think I think you might have this as a point to pull up, Al. I know we were looking at the articles in Inman about this as well as, the prediction of, commission rates, could fall as much as 30%. And I think that was specific to the buy side. And that seems like that's a potential, a reasonable thing because of the agents that actually probably should be charging less. I mean, in all honesty, like, the ones that go in and negotiate, they don't get their fee paid for by the seller. So they only get 1% or whatever they offer. Or the buyer was only willing to come up with X amount of dollars or whatever. It's going to be a shit show. So it's definitely going to be interesting, but there's going to be probably over time whittling away of the buy side commission to again for the subset of the market that's the weak negotiators.
Yeah, for sure. So as we kind of wrap up, we hit this final point that we've got, and we've touched on it a little bit. And I think the first two topics, kind of the election and historically what we've seen during election years, as well as the change on the commission, everything that goes into play at this point on August 17th, as we really get into kind of the rest of the year and kind of what that forecast really looks like. And you look at kind of home price forecasts already, like what we're even talking about, and Al just kind of hit on this here a little bit with this slide.
Yeah, well, everyone has an opinion, and you can see, from Fannie Mae to NAR to Zillow, what everyone's opinions are, whether we're going to see appreciation, depreciation. The consensus is that there's going to be a slight rise in home prices for the next, which is kind of what we were figuring based upon what we're seeing here. So the consensus average, which, there's not a whole lot of accuracy because you got Fannie Mae at 4.8, you got Freddie Mac down here at 0.5%. They're saying that prices will go up. That's a pretty big gap in opinion right there. But
huge.
So they're, averaging, they're saying about 3%, which is like, that's normal. There's nothing I see abnormal about that.
Right.
Let's see if there's
a comment here on, Ricky Cruz is saying stack listings at 3-4%. I would do the same thing. And actually that's what I did before anyways. Like whenever I'm negotiating, whenever I'm presenting to a seller our system for how we're going to sell their home for up to 18% more than the methods of traditional agents, at the end of that presentation, I told them I charge 4%. Now we just have to determine what we want to offer on the buy side to the agent that's likely going to find the buyer. And in the CHSA presentation, one of the laws is understanding that 71% of the time a buyer, the buyer for your home is working with another agent. They're represented by another agent. So we don't want to offer less to the largest pool of potential buyers that are out there. This is one of the benefits of having MLS. So, but I always negotiated what I charge for the things I'm doing to represent you separately than what we offered on the buy side in the MLS. That's how I charge 7%. So, agents should do this. If you probably have a better chance of now charging a little more on the list side for your services and than you did before. And so, and some of these agents, like what Ricky Caruth is saying, they're going to be increase their average commission.
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to skills and negotiation for sure.
100%. I mean, it's the thing that we've talked about for years, right? Like you need to wake up and go to bed thinking about listings. And this is what I, just telling everybody, I would rather you guys have a problem of having 100 listings in your inventory than not having any listings at all. I promise you the better problem to solve is having 100 active listings in your inventory than having no listings at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like anything and everything you do has to revolve around it. I know we're really hitting on the buy side in this conversation today, which is important to know to be able to how to position and negotiate it. But the truth of it, man, CHS and CHBA are the same thing. It's the same process. It's just a way to meet, find out their goals, their challenges, articulate our value, and get them to believe that this is the best system to help them achieve what they're wanting to achieve.
Another point I would make too is agents that decide, to hell with the buy side commission and the agent on the buy side, and just take the listing at a higher percent and then don't set the seller up for success. If you become known in your marketplace as the difficult, every listing that you have is going to be a damn negotiation nightmare from the agents that are representing buyers, they will steer them away from you.
100%.
And that will happen. So, it happens today, even as it is. And there's some, right or wrong, get into ethics and all that. But when you got a difficult agent, hey man, you know what? These, the like in that article, the foundations in that neighborhood weren't built. That's the rumor, right? Like this neighborhood, the foundations weren't built too well. I don't know if I'd want to look at these or not. Like you will get steered away from agents that make this negotiation process difficult for the agent that brings the buyer or the buyer themselves in the negotiation. That's not who you want to become. And there will be agents that absolutely. That dominate on the listing side and don't care so much on the buy side. But at the same time, I would never shoot myself in the foot. I want to double in the deal. So, there's, a percentage of the time that you're going to double in deals. And now you're not, now you're doing it for just 3% or 4%. So I don't think too many agents are going to not prepare the seller to have to at least put some type of compensation or concessions for the buy side.
100%. 100%, man. I think you always have to remember too, like what you said, we don't want to develop that reputation that we're a difficult challenge. We're not going to compensate and pay. And to your point, right? It's like, well, that's unethical. Well, let's understand something. Compensation drives behavior, and people will navigate and make changes and do things ethical, unethical based on compensation. And so just as a reputation, which is your brand, right? You don't want your brand in the marketplace and other agents to look at you and go, I would never want to work with that guy because like he doesn't compensate. He's an absolute difficult and like we need to do everything to stay away from him.
Right.
Doesn't matter right or wrong, but that's just human behavior.
Yep. No, here's another interesting thought too. So, because buyers have been able to get in a car with any Pop-Tart agent that'll go show them a house and go look at homes and kind of get engaged in the process without any friction forever since in history, majority of buyers that don't sign buyer, have them sign buyer brokerage agreements. And that's been the process. Do we think there will be a fallout of certain segments of the market where buyers just say, you know what, F this, I'm not going to go meet with this agent and talk about a buyer brokerage agreement and sign this, we'll just rent something. Is that something that's potentially could happen as far as buyers go? Well,
so are you saying that then they just decide they're not going to buy a house at all because they're not willing to sign a buyer rep agreement? Is that what I don't know?
Yeah, they say they get frustrated with the process. They didn't like the agent. They didn't want to sign anything with them. Do they go find another agent, or do they just say go rent a house instead, or what? So some certain segments of the that aren't sure that they really want to buy or not. It could affect whether they do buy or not potentially. With a shitty agent that does a super interesting explaining it.
I think it's a super interesting question, but I fundamentally don't believe that agents sell houses anyway.
Right.
When a buyer needs to buy a house, it's for their needs, and if they have a high motivation to buy that house for whatever reason it is, then they're going to buy it. If the rates are there, they can afford the monthly payment. If the inventory is there for them to look and find something that meets most of their needs, nothing's ever going to meet them all. They're going to buy a house. So they're either going to buy it with representation or not. I think it boils down to that. And so when you think about educating our consumer base on the dangers of not having representation, none of us would be dumb enough to go into a litigation situation as a defendant or a plaintiff for that matter without legal representation. And most of us would be, we wouldn't be wanting to find the cheapest attorney in town. We're looking for the best. I always want the best representing me. Now we all know that the best comes with a high dollar per hour, but they're worth every dang penny. My CPA is probably one of the most expensive CPAs in town. And I'm glad to pay his fee every single year because of the advice he gives me is gold. It's gold bars. It's helped my family and I, there's certain things that you just don't go in navigating on your own when you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Shoot. I mean, I consider myself a pretty knowledgeable real estate professional. And, I've made mistakes even as in buying mistakes and bought the wrong property. Maybe I didn't negotiate an inspection where I should have learned my lessons. Right. But it's going to lead to a lot of litigation, in my opinion. Guys, I want to share with you something that you guys taught me and gave me the gift. What I'm going to share is the secret weapon for buyers moving forward. If you're nervous, obviously we gave you the nugget CHBA, absolutely 100%. But I'm going to give you like a specific tactic that if you don't have this and your paycheck depends, let's say 50% of it depends on buy side transactions, this will keep that 30% that the industry thinks that we're going to be losing in your pocket. I'm going to let you know what that is in 1 minute. But before I do that, like how I did that there, if you're interested in joining us at Agent to CEO, we have the CEO of the largest real estate company in North America, Leo Pereira. He's amazing. We have Kendall Bonner speaking. We have the two handsome gentlemen, John Kitchens. I don't know, 16,000 coaching calls with the top 500 teams in the nation. Jay Kinder, number 2 agent in the world, selling 500 homes a year. That's the room you need to be in if you want to navigate through this next rite of passage. And just go to agent to CEO, CLE.com. And then we're going to be partying with Gary LaVox on night 2 with some Rascal Flats, Dusty Black. Dusty Black, dude, his new songs are phenomenal, dude. He just put one absolute fire. So he's going to be coming back to Cleveland, his second trip back to Cleveland to hop on the stage of Forward. But here's the number one thing you're going to need. And this is going to make it infinitely easier. Buyer's Advantage program. Buyer's Advantage. Do you have a Buyer's Advantage program or do you not? If you do not have a Buyer's Advantage program, the good news is you can message any of us. We can have a conversation about how you can become part of our community. If you're already part of our community, then we have that for you. And we have that resource that you can rip off, duplicate, change it, make it whatever you want. But the Buyer's Advantage program was the easiest thing to present to a buyer. And how did you
realized all the value
built that, right? Like what forced you guys? There was a point in your career you were like, we need a better way on the buy side to articulate our value.
Yeah. Dude, we were taking J. Abraham principles, risk reversal, articulating your value, all of that, and then took all the things that we do for a buyer that had never been really done before and put that into a document for us to be. It was a presentation on here's what we do to represent you in the sale. It was our first kind of take on a buyer presentation when they didn't have one, when nobody had one. And so, it absolutely, it's everything we teach. We've been teaching forever, but
yeah. So ask us about that. Like I said, if you're part of our community, reach out. Our staff will get you a copy of one of ours. I know mine was slightly different than Jay Kinder Real Estate Experts, which was different than Michael Reese's. And the cool thing is you put your own spin on what you want your advantage. What advantages are you going to give your buyer that they're not going to get? So
it's the same. It was the Buyer Advantage program was the first version of what CHBA is today. There's the CHBA presentation. It takes all of the factors, over 80 different variables involved in the home buying process, and allows you to break that down on the things you're going to do to again, you're just building up the value of what it is you do. The Buyer's Advantage program was the document that kind of went alongside that highlighted everything. And it was what they would sign first because it was all value add. And then next they would sign the buyer brokerage agreement. When you got to the buyer brokerage agreement, you've been articulating all this value that they're going to get. And then the script was very simple. It's like, we're going to, our compensation, we charge is 3%. We're going to add, and what I would do, and I go back and forth a little bit because there's a little bit of more risk involved with this today, but I love risk reversal. Say, listen, we guarantee to get our fee paid for by the seller, or we'll do it for free. That would be the most gangster 100% close rate offer you could make. No risk. You have no risk. I'm going to represent you. I'm going to represent you on this deal. I'm so confident I'll be able to get the seller to pay our fee. Now, that might be in the form of raising the price, or it might be built into the concessions that they offer. But we guarantee it that they will pay it, or I'll do it for free. And that would be, everybody says yes. That's just what I would do. And I would go to negotiating now I'm fighting for my commission. I'm negotiating. I'm a better negotiator than the other agent, I promise. And so, if we come back and they still wanted the house and I couldn't get it done, then every once in a while you might have to do one for free, I guess. But that's, that was, again, learning these principles from Jay Abraham. We were taking that and putting it into our listing presentation, buyer presentation, and creating ways to make the value visible so they can see what it is that we do for our compensation.
Love it. Fellas, I love the format. Great talking points today. A lot of value. Appreciate you guys listening in. If you love the new format, loved what we hit on today, hit us in the comments, give us some love. Also, don't be afraid to throw out some things that you would love for us to touch on, as this is going to be the format for us moving into the future. So, fellas, great job. Love it. And let's keep rocking. See ya.
Later.